young at heart. Hey, Jonathan.
Subcommittee will come to order. Good morning to everyone, and welcome to our hearing today, our third oversight hearing regarding the $7.2 billion provided by the Economic Recovery Act for broadband programs. The programs are administered by the U.S. Department of Commerce through the NTIA and the Department of Agriculture through its Rural Utilities Service. It's our pleasure this morning to welcome the NTIA Director, Assistant Secretary for Communications and Information, Larry Strickling, and Rural Utilities Service Administrator, Jonathan Adelstein, who will discuss the process that they have undertaken for awarding grants for the first round of funding and the standards their agencies have developed that will govern the funding awards during the second round. The Recovery Act's broadband program presents an historic opportunity for increasing the availability of broadband and elevating the standing of the United States among developed nations in the percentage of our population that uses it. How effectively these goals are met will be determined in large part by the standards that govern the deployment of the program's funds. During our last oversight hearing, I expressed a range of concerns about the standards that had governed the first round of funding and encouraged the agencies to consider modifying those standards prior to publication of the Notice of Funds Availability for the second round. I'm pleased to note this morning that the rules for round two largely address those concerns. For example, in the RUS program, grants of more than 50% of project costs are no longer only available to communities that are deemed remote, meaning that those communities are more than 50 miles from a city of at least 20,000 people. That round one restriction had disqualified from major grant awards small, isolated communities, typically those ringed by mountains that are located throughout the eastern United States. I'm pleased that this remoteness test has been removed from the round two standards. The rules for round two have also been changed so that rural applicants are no longer required to apply first to RUS and be rejected before NTIA can make an award to that applicant. And I'm pleased to note that in round two, RUS has specified a measure of funding that will be available for satellite-delivered broadband services. I very much appreciate the agency's responsiveness to our concerns on these matters, and I commend them for the positive changes that they have made in the program rules. I do want to offer this morning a couple of suggestions for round two. First, I urge the agencies to give round one applicants whose applications were rejected ample guidance so that they can improve their applications for round two. For example, round one applicants at the present time cannot find out how many points the winning applications scored during round one. So those who were not successful in round one currently really don't know how close they came to receiving an award. Many of those round one applicants could have been on the cusp of receiving an award, and they may be discouraged from applying in round two. If they knew they were close, they would be encouraged. They should be aware of that fact, and the agency should give them guidance about how to improve their round two applications. I also urge the RUS to give serious consideration to granting waivers of the requirement that projects cost no more than $10,000 per home passed. Many areas without access to broadband today are among the most difficult and expensive to serve due to terrain. Many of these communities are mountainous and also because of the distances that are involved over which the infrastructures would have to be deployed. And many communities in the eastern United States that are in fact isolated, ringed by mountains, a long way from the nearest metropolitan area will simply not be served if the requirement that the project cost be more than $10,000 per home passed remains inviolate. And so I would strongly encourage generous waivers to that requirement where the situation merits those waivers. I want to commend NTIA and RUS for the tremendous work that they have done on the broadband program to date. The agencies have had to create these programs out of whole cloth. You've had to hire staff and train that staff over a short period of time and then begin to make grant awards. And I believe you've done an outstanding job of that, and you have this committee's thanks for the fine work that you have both performed and that your staffs have performed. You've done so under short time frames and with a lot of uncontrollable events like the snowstorm that I know was a major impediment but didn't slow you down. And so congratulations for that performance. Mr. Strickland, Mr. Edelstein, thank you for joining us this morning. I look forward to your comments on the matters that I've raised and matters that other members will raise. And at this time, I'm pleased to recognize our ranking member, the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Stearns.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for holding this hearing, and I want to also thank our witnesses for being here. We look forward to their testimony. Mr. Chairman, before we go any further, I would like to recognize the newest member of our subcommittee on telecommunications and technology and internet, Mr. Parker Griffith from Alabama. So welcome. We are delighted to have you on the subcommittee. I think, Mr. Chairman, your terms, well, you said you have a range of concerns. I like that terminology that you used. That was diplomatic and also pointing out there are some legitimate feelings here on both sides. We feel that the NTIA and RUS broadband stimulus programs are not working as well as they could. There are a number of cases that we want to bring up to question the effectiveness of the program. And I know many on that side particularly touted that this would be a huge stimulus and start sort of a new technological revolution, which ultimately I believe it can. I think, honestly, we think done right, this can move towards a huge opportunity for everybody. But let me just, for example, give you a case where it's come to my attention there have been some specific complaints about the overbuilding of existing networks. In North Georgia, NTIA awarded $33.5 million grant to an area that already has extensive broadband service. According to a letter from the incumbent provider, Windstream, 90% of the homes and businesses in the project already have access to broadband. All Americans should have access to broadband, robust broadband. But if the goal of the stimulus was to bring broadband to areas without any access, then this $33.5 million could have been better spent. I think we all agree on that. Now, supporters of the stimulus promised that it would create millions of new jobs and that all Americans would have access to fast and affordable broadband. Yet, here we are a year later. I'm not sure we see the huge change, and the early reviews don't bear that out. Now, during the markup, as I mentioned, all of us were hopeful that this would create more jobs. In fact, many people talked about it would spark sorely needed economic development and creation. I mean, those are the exact words of some people on the other side. It appears that some of this money may be going to pay for duplicate services and facilities where consumers already have broadband access. If that's the case, the money will not be bringing access to unserved areas. Moreover, it will make it much more difficult for the existing providers to operate their businesses in the face of a government-subsidized competitor. For the United States to achieve ubiquitous broadband deployment, the private sector will have to shoulder the bulk of the financial burden. To the extent that any government money will be spent on financing broadband deployment, such money should be made available in areas that are otherwise uneconomic to serve. The broadband stimulus programs violated, I think, this central tenet. Congress attached strings to the NTIA program in the form of network neutrality and interconnection obligations that dissuaded experienced providers from participating in the program. In addition to driving away the companies most likely to help us achieve ubiquitous broadband deployment, NTIA is now actually subsidizing broadband competition rather than extending coverage to unserved areas. During the first round of funding, NTIA set up a process whereby providers only had 30 days to identify applications that would grant funding in areas that already served and to contest such applications. The consensus is that 30 days has not been enough time, and NTIA has granted applications that appear to subsidize broadband competition rather than extend services to unserved areas. Now NTIA has actually proposed to shorten the window for contesting applications to 15 days. Now, I just can't conceive of how a 15-day window will ensure that NTIA is not subsidizing broadband competition rather than extending service to rural areas. In fact, during the stimulus markup, we had a Republican amendment that would have ensured that unserved areas would get priority over underserved. Unfortunately, this amendment failed on a party line vote. This program would have really benefited if our amendment had been adopted. If the NTIA and RUS broadband programs were subsidizing areas where existing providers are already offering service, the programs will harm deployment and cost jobs rather than promote broadband and stimulate the economy. Further deployment in areas that already have access will not expand broadband availability, and providers in high-cost, sparsely populated areas already have difficulty covering the cost of deployment. Splitting their subscribers based upon subsidizing a new competitor will only make it harder to recover broadband investments, putting jobs in jeopardy rather than creating them. So those, Mr. Chairman, are my range of concerns, and I appreciate you having the hearing. I look forward to our witnesses.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stearns. The gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Markey, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for having this very important hearing. You know, we had a very bad period of time during the 8 years of the Bush administration where we dropped from second in broadband deployment and adoption to 15th in the world. It was not a good record. And since broadband deployment is, for all intents and purposes, a proxy for kind of determining how rapidly your economy is advancing, we obviously need a plan to make sure that we get back on the road where we don't allow Luxembourg and Finland and other countries to pass us, which they've done over the last 8 years. So that's really what this is all about, and the Recovery Act was a significant step forward in increasing deployment and adoption levels and unleashing the power of broadband to create jobs, improve health care, actually looking right across the whole board, including safety, public safety tools, and the National Broadband Plan, which I inserted language into the stimulus bill to require the administration to produce a national broadband plan, is due back on March 17th, and to the Irish that's a very lucky day, you know, not only for the Irish but for the whole country when this broadband plan is produced. And I look forward to that plan being released in the next couple of weeks. In addition, there is non-discrimination and network interconnection obligations that was built into the stimulus bill, and I was proud to be able to write that language in as well, because that's central to ensuring that all of those applications, all of those new gadgets that are out there have an incentive to be developed because they'll have access to this network. That's the whole key. It's competition. It's to ensure that we do have that set of incentives and the broadband mapping plan so that we know where we have to go, what we have to do. All of that is central as well, all of that in legislation. So, Mr. Chairman, this is about as important a hearing as we can have for our country, long-term and economic growth. I thank you for having it. I look forward to our witnesses.
Thank you very much, Mr. Markey. The ranking Republican member of the Energy and Commerce Committee, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Barton, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for holding this hearing. Thank you to our witnesses. I'm used to seeing Mr. Adelstein as a part of the FCC. It's a little bit difficult to recognize him in his new role, but we appreciate you being here. I'm going to submit my written statement for the record, Mr. Chairman. the concern that myself and I think most of the minority have is that we really feel this money should have gone to unserved areas before going to areas that are already served, and there appears to be quite a bit of evidence that the projects, a number of the projects that have been awarded have gone to areas that are already being served, and in round two there doesn't appear to be any requirement at all that they discriminate between served and unserved. So that would be our big objection, that we really try to target these projects to areas that don't have broadband before we begin to give awards to areas that do. And with that, I will yield back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barton. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Stupak, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing. One provision in the ARRA that has generated excitement in rural communities is the broadband funding. In the coming months, due to a broadband stimulus grant from the Rural Utility Service, 14 townships in Michigan's Upper Peninsula with populations ranging from 5,000 to as few as 175 people will begin to realize the benefits of high-speed broadband access for the first time ever. The private company that received the funding estimates that during construction of the broadband project, approximately 170 jobs will be created in the area. My office has received numerous letters from constituents in the area asking one simple question: will this project finally give me broadband services? While I wish I could respond to every single letter with an emphatic yes, the project will only benefit residents in 3 of the 31 rural counties in my district, so more work remains. The NTIA will also provide a loan and grant for a Michigan company to build a fiber optic network, which will run through 9 counties in the northern Lower Peninsula. This project will, for the first time in Michigan's history, connect the Upper and Lower Peninsula with fiber at the Mackinac Bridge. An immediate impact of this fiber connection will be that Michigan Tech University will have access to the Internet 2 high-speed network and will be connected to 210 educational institutions, 70 corporations, and 45 nonprofit and government agencies. These projects never would have happened without the stimulus broadband funding, so I have a special appreciation for the benefits the NTIA and RUS programs will provide for rural communities. However, I want to caution both NTIA and RUS to be diligent in distributing this funding in a timely manner, but not to rush it out the door without ensuring it is going to where it will do the most good. I'm specifically concerned with NTIA's rule change from 30 days to 15 days for incumbent rural broadband providers to inform the agency of a proposed project that overlaps with their service area. I want this program to succeed. I do not want us to look back and talk about waste, fraud, and abuse at the end of this year. Mr. Chairman, thanks for holding this hearing. I look forward to discussing these issues with our witnesses, how we can work together to maximize broadband deployment throughout rural America.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stupak. The gentlelady from Tennessee, Ms. Blackburn, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, I welcome our witnesses. I had the opportunity to visit with them before the hearing started, and I think that they know we're all interested in seeing how quickly broadband is going to get to our state. So we do know, as Secretary Strickland mentioned, we've had 2 awards in Tennessee, and we know that there will be more that are going to come forward. As we go forward on the Recovery Act, which so many of us have really been skeptical of in the first place, and we talked about that, it is troubling to hear a steady flow of stories that much of the money being spent is duplicative. Furthermore, when these grants are subsidizing areas that already have broadband service, which in essence is government-subsidized competition, there is the opportunity for lost jobs and overbilling, which defeats the purpose of these funds. It seems odd that we have put aside all this money for broadband deployment, have instructed the administration to send the money out to the states without the staff to execute or a reasonable timetable in which to do it, and to top it all off, We're doing all of it before we even have the mapping plan. And as I mentioned to you in our conversation, this is something that our constituents are aware of. The creative community that is headquartered in my state is watching this very closely, and they are very conversant on this issue and come to us regularly. And we're going to look forward to drilling down a little deeper on these issues with you, and we're so appreciative of your time of coming before us. And Mr. Chairman, thank you for the hearing.
Thank you very much, Ms. Blackburn. The chairman of the Energy and Commerce Committee, the gentleman from California, Mr. Waxman, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Boucher, for holding this hearing to continue our committee's oversight of broadband programs created by the Recovery Act. The broadband funding in the Recovery Act is dedicated to building essential digital infrastructure for the 21st century throughout the United States, and it is creating jobs for today and tomorrow. This is the subcommittee's third oversight hearing to review this important Recovery Act program, and it will likely not be the last. Although I am confident that the National Telecommunications and Information Administration and the Rural Utilities Service have been managing this program diligently, the committee will continue to fulfill its oversight role going forward. I know that the Obama administration is also committed to conducting rigorous oversight of Recovery Act programs, including broadband funding. In addition to unprecedented transparency, the President's 2011 budget proposes to reallocate funds to allow specifically for continued NTIA oversight, monitoring, grant evaluation, and reporting, essential to meet the highest standards for transparency and accountability in this program. At our first oversight hearing on this matter, I stated NTIA and RUS have the difficult task of spending the taxpayers' money quickly, yet wisely. They would have to act in a decisive manner, but do so in ways that were fair, open, and transparent to the taxpayers. As the first funding cycle for the Broadband Technology Opportunities Program and the Broadband Initiatives Program comes to a conclusion, I believe the agencies have met this difficult challenge. To date, the two agencies have awarded over 60 projects, totaling over $1.25 billion in grants and loans. The NTIA has also awarded nearly $100 million in broadband mapping grants to almost every state and several territories. The projects are touching every corner of the country and range from the creation of a fiber optic network throughout Maine to broadband connectivity in 65 communities in southwestern Alaska to digital literacy training throughout Southern California. BTOP and BIP projects will not only extend and enhance broadband offerings in the United States, they will also serve the Recovery Act's central objective of creating and preserving jobs. I want to commend Assistant Secretary Strickling and Administrator Adelstein for their efforts, not to mention the staff at NTIA and RUS in rising to this challenge. NTIA and RUS also merit praise for being open to suggestions for improvements. I'm encouraged by the changes made in the second notice of funds availability issued late last year. The reduced administrative burdens on applicants streamlined the application process and now allow satellite providers to play a role in providing broadband service to rural areas. I'm particularly pleased with NTIA's emphasis on so-called middle-mile projects and a commitment to provide the best services at the best value to the American taxpayer. I look forward to your testimony today, and I appreciate the participation and the active role of our subcommittee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Chairman Waxman. The gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Terry, is recognized for 2 minutes.
I must admit, Mr. Chairman, that the entire process of establishing a policy that will spur broadband deployment in this country seems to be a little backwards. Soon we will have a document submitted to Congress by the FCC that will provide us with a national broadband plan. I support the efforts of the FCC and everyone involved in creating such a document, but I find it odd and backwards that the FCC was instructed to create a national broadband policy within the same legislation that appropriated over $7 billion to build out broadband. If we acknowledge that our broadband infrastructure in America is in need of a national policy to make us more competitive with the rest of the world, then would it have not made more sense to give the FCC the authority to create the National Broadband Plan and then legislate policy that would stimulate our economy by creating these incentives needed to build more broadband? Instead, Congress rushes to spend money, and we have the hope that they get it right. While I hope to stand corrected, I'm sure that we got the broadband stimulus program right. I'm increasingly concerned that NTIA and RUS are finding entities that want to build broadband networks over existing broadband networks. The term underserved is too subjective and is an excuse to use taxpayer dollars to build networks that the government wants to build under their terms and conditions. Mr. Chairman, over a year ago, before the stimulus bill passed Congress, this subcommittee had the opportunity to use sacred taxpayer dollars to build networks for Americans that have no broadband today. Delivering broadband to unserved Americans will stimulate our economy and create jobs. That should have been the focus of the federal broadband stimulus program. Today, I look at the list of projects funded under the first round, and I see $7.5 million to the city of Los Angeles, $1.9 million to the city of Boston, and $25 million to a fund network in Maine that completely overlaps existing fiber network, yet many unserved areas received nothing. Yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Terry. The gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Doyle, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, we've given you guys a pretty tough task. We, from hearing our members here today, want you to have all this money deployed yesterday, but we also want you to do your due diligence to make sure that you're not putting projects out there that are later going to embarrass you and embarrass all of us. So it's a tough balancing act that we've given you, but I think you're up to the task. I would say to some of my friends, I support deploying broadband in areas that don't have it. That's what we want to do, and that's the key to the future. But I would also say to my friends that many of us who represent urban areas, and especially poor urban areas, have many communities that are underserved. The private sector has not put broadband or not sufficient, the up-to-date broadband in these areas, and people are falling behind. And as a result, these people aren't going to have access to the jobs of tomorrow if we're not able to serve these underserved areas also. So I don't think it should be an either-or proposition. Obviously, we need to do both, and I support both. The projects in Pennsylvania so far, the 2 projects that have been awarded, I'm happy to see the Penn-Ren project. It's going to create a high-speed middle-mile network to connect anchor institutions like schools and libraries and universities, community colleges and hospitals and more to each other, while helping these last-mile companies connect to that high-speed network. The other project, which invests in wireless and wireline backhaul to provide wholesale access over an existing public safety wireless network in my state. Both of these projects, I think they make sense. They leverage existing revenues and both serve areas that are in need of broadband. So with that being said, I look forward to asking some questions on the sustainable broadband adoption grants that are coming up in round 2. I would just say it's one thing to have connectivity, but it's another thing to use it and use it effectively to promote education, economic development, and improve health care. Broadband is the dial tone of the 21st century, Mr. Chairman, and I'm looking forward to the testimony of our witnesses and the questions to follow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Doyle. I would like to add the subcommittee's welcome to the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Griffith. And Mr. Griffith, you're recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I have no comment, and I appreciate so much the opportunity to participate in the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Griffith. We'll add 2 minutes to your question time for this distinguished panel of witnesses. The gentleman from California, Mr. McNerney, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you for holding today's hearing to discuss the current status of the broadband grants provided by the American Recovery and Investment Act. As we all know, expanding broadband access is crucial to promoting the American innovation and improving our economy. I do hope to learn today about how the NTIA is progressing with its Broadband Technology Opportunities Program now that the agency is accepting the second round of funding distribution proposals. I understand that some changes have been made to improve the application process, and I'm anxious to see how these changes have resulted positive outcomes. It is crucial to fully understand where to focus our energies as we continue working to expand broadband services, and I'm eager to see the results of the broadband mapping grants. Again, I want to thank the panelists, Mr. Strickland and Mr. Adelstein, for coming today, and I look forward to working with you to improving the grant process. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. McNerney. The gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Shimkus, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to welcome the Deputy Secretary Strickland and, of course, John Adelstein, who we've worked with a long time ago. It's unfortunate that we're doing this and we still don't address what is underserved and what is unserved. We've been trying to get a definition of underserved. The debate, the opening statements are part of this debate. In bills, we tried to define that. We weren't allowed to get a definition of that, and that's why we're going to continue to have this frustration about where does the money go, and are people being incentivized by the fact that we've gone into additional debt. That's what we've done with ARRA. We've gone into additional debt to help an undefined purpose, whether it's unserved or underserved, and the definition of underserved, what is that? So, Mr. Chairman, I would recommend we clarify this to help us as we move forward, and if anything, that should be part of the oversight hearing. If we're incentivizing people who already have broadband access with taxpayers' dollars, and there's areas of our country that have no service, shame on us. And that's simplistic, and that's clear, and we should get it straight. And now, to be on the nicer side, I would like NTIA to come in so we can talk about E911, the digital platform, where do we move next. But this is key in this whole debate. If 911 services are going to go over a broadband platform, we better have broadband deployment in areas where there's not broadband deployment now. And as the commissioner from the state of California said in a testimony here, if we're giving out money before we have a plan, we're going to waste money. And I fear that's where we're going. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shimkus. The gentlelady from the Virgin Islands, Ms. Christensen, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to again thank you, Chairman Boucher and Ranking Member Stearns, for holding this third oversight hearing on the broadband programs and initiatives created under the ARRA, and for your commitment to exercising our oversight responsibilities on these programs. The ARRA is making a positive difference in many, many areas, and we just want to ensure that the same is true for broadband reaching unserved and underserved areas. As Mr. Stupak said, the programs and initiatives are particularly important to rural areas, and although people don't think of the Virgin Islands as a rural area, I understand that we're just second to Puerto Rico in the lack of internet access. We're very, very much and underserved. I want to applaud both NTIA and RUS, though, for what I see as a continuing great collaboration between the two agencies, as well as for the outreach you've done, the technical assistance you provided, for extending the deadlines, for the simplification and streamlining of the process, and the other changes that you've made to assist applicants and to better meet your mandate. Obviously, there are several concerns, and I look forward to hearing your testimony and being able to interact with you during the question and answer period. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Christensen. The gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Booyer, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. I also would like to welcome Dr. Griffith. I welcome you to the Republican Party. I welcome you to the committee. I think your expertise is going to be very valuable to the committee. I also want to note that as you go into the next Congress, I'm not going to be here, so I'm going to bring this to your attention. since you're sitting way down at the bottom of the dais, what happened in this committee was something that we had not seen here in Congress for a very, very long time, and it was the distortion of the committee ratios. And this committee's ratio got distorted because we had a new president said that he's going to deliver change that America can believe in. And what we've learned, in order to deliver the, quote, the change that he thinks America needs, he needed a process that he could jam it through. And in order to do that, you control the process by manipulating it. So they distorted the ratio on this committee so they could actually achieve the goal of passing a climate change bill and passing health care for which America said they don't want. So what's happened is some of the Democrat colleagues have folded over onto this side of the aisle. So if Republicans, which I believe are going to take control of the next Congress, do not be upset when you're sitting back on the Democrat side of the aisle. Okay? I just want to alert you ahead of time. The other is, I'm going to call you Dr. Griffith. I'm going to call you doctor because you understand triage. You take care of the worst patients first. We are dealing with what I call a policy of shame. A policy of shame because we aren't even waiting for the maps to be done, and we're pushing the money out. Why? To make sure money gets to underserved instead of unserved. So we're actually leaving people out. So your premise as a doctor and how you view the world, you're going to have some challenges here because we are actually exercising policies of shame. And I think it's absolutely wrong. And I'm very, very bothered that we're doing that in this committee, and I welcome your dimension. With that, I yield back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Booyer. The gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Space, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member Stearns, for holding this hearing this morning. Before I begin, I'd like to welcome my colleague, Parker, to the committee. It's not how I envisioned you ascending to this committee, but it's good to see you here, Parker. To date, the state of Ohio has received a total of 6 awards under the Recovery Act for the broadband programs, 4 of which are RUS programs, 2 NTIA, and all are worthy. However, the NTIA programs deal primarily with, one deals with state mapping, one deals with awareness, both of which are very important. The RUS programs deal kind of on a microcosm basis, small programs covering no more than 3 or 4 counties. And I don't want to underscore the fact, or I don't want to forget that these are very important projects, and we're supportive of all of them. However, we haven't seen what we believe is necessary in terms of providing a regional approach in Appalachian Ohio in particular, where regardless of how you define underserved or unserved, we will meet that definition. The counties that I represent 16, almost all of them fall within Appalachian proper, and we are missing out on the hope that broadband provides, both with respect to economic development, but pertaining to quality of life issues as well. Healthcare access, educational access, all areas where we find ourselves at a disadvantage, and we know that broadband fulfills and will fulfill the promise of bridging those divides. We've been working with stakeholders in the district, and I'm optimistic that in spite of the successes that the NTIA and RUS have had thus far, you understand and are fully appreciative that there's much more work to be done, and I certainly hope that some of that work will be done in Appalachian Ohio. Again, thank you, gentlemen, for being here today and for your hard work in your capacities.
Thank you very much, Mr. Space. We welcome now our witnesses for this morning, a distinguished panel consisting of the 2 individuals who are responsible for administering the $7.2 billion stimulus fund enacted through the American Recovery Act. Mr. Larry Strickling is the Assistant Secretary of Communications and Information at NTIA in the U.S. Department of Commerce. Mr. Jonathan Adelstein is the Administrator of the Rural Utility Service in the U.S. Department of Agriculture. From 2002 until 2009, he served as a commissioner on the Federal Communications Commission. We welcome both of you. This is your third appearance, as I recall, before our subcommittee, and we thank you for taking the time to share your views with us this morning on round one and your plans for round two. Without objection, your prepared written statements will be made part of the record. We would welcome your oral summary and ask that you keep that to about 5 minutes. Mr. Strickland.
Thank you, Chairman Boucher.
And we please turn your mic on.
I thought I have.
Oh, I guess you have. Just pull it a bit closer.
Get it a little closer here. Thank you,
All right,
sir.
thank you.
Thank you, and thank Ranking Member Stearns, and thank members of the subcommittee for the invitation to testify today on our program to expand broadband access and adoption pursuant to the Recovery Act. Also very pleased to make what is now the sixth appearance with Administrator Adelstein as we make the rounds of oversight hearings among the various committees that are interested in this topic, and I think that points out how important this topic is to so many people. I'm pleased to report that by the end of this week, we at NTIA will have awarded over $1 billion in grants to build broadband infrastructure, to equip public computer centers, to increase the adoption of broadband services, and to have the states collect data for the national broadband map. These investments will help bridge the technological divide. They will create jobs. They will improve health care and education in communities across America. When I testified here before the subcommittee last September, we had just received the first round of applications, and we're starting our review of more than 1,800 applications that have been submitted. I want to assure you that the projects that we have funded to date, for those projects, the money is well spent, and I report to you today that the projects we have selected for funding constitute a major investment in upgrading our nation's infrastructure, creating new jobs, and improving our economic health. As I indicated, by the end of this week, we will have awarded over $1 billion in grants. We have awarded grants in all 50 states and in several of the territories. This includes 54 broadband mapping grants totaling about $100 million and 59 BTOP grants worth more than $960 million. We're funding 4 types of projects, and I'd like to give you a brief update on each of those. First, the infrastructure projects. These are funds to build out improved infrastructure or new infrastructure in unserved and underserved areas. And I look forward to clearing up what is obviously a misunderstanding about exactly what the difference is between unserved and underserved. We'll do that in the question and answer. But the point I want to make is that our projects, infrastructure projects, are what we call comprehensive community infrastructure projects. We bring high-speed, middle-mile infrastructure into communities or regions and then connect key community anchor institutions, the libraries, the hospitals, the community colleges. This core infrastructure, once it is built, is available to any service provider in the area under our open network requirements. This feature, which is required of all of our projects, and indeed the Recovery Act, enables companies who are already present in the area who offer broadband to homes and businesses to improve their service offerings and reach neighborhoods that are not adequately served today. We would need to come back into this in the question and answer, but it is fundamentally not the case that we are subsidizing competitors here. These projects benefit the existing providers because they have access to these facilities to reach customers that perhaps for economic reasons they haven't been able to adequately serve before this project is built. So let me give you some examples. In Michigan, we have funded Merit Network to build a 955-mile advanced fiber optic network through underserved counties in Michigan's Lower Peninsula. This project will build direct connections to 44 anchor institutions like libraries, universities, community colleges. But as I noted, this infrastructure is available to all the providers in the area, which means that this investment can lead to new or improved broadband service for more than 886,000 households, 45,000 businesses, and 422 anchor institutions. In North Florida, we awarded $30 million to the North Florida Broadband Authority, a collaboration of 14 North Florida county governments who had assessed that they had a need for these services in those counties. It's a 1,200-mile fixed wireless broadband network that will directly connect 300 anchor institutions. But again, existing service providers will be able to use this network to offer broadband to an estimated 150,000 households and 27,000 businesses. Overall, the infrastructure projects we are funding in round one will result in the construction of 20,000 miles of broadband networks. They will build connections into more than 5,000 community anchor institutions, and they will enable existing providers to offer newer or improved broadband services to an estimated 10 million households. The Recovery Act also directs us to award grants to public computer centers. These grants are important for communities where residents cannot easily subscribe to broadband at home due to its unavailability or affordability. They can be a vital link to give people access to job, health, educational information, and to gain the skills they need to get jobs and compete in the 21st century economy. The 18 projects we have selected for funding will all significantly increase the ability of thousands of Americans to get access to high-speed internet services at their local libraries, their community centers, and other local institutions. For example, our $6 million grant in South Carolina will enable a computer center to be open to the public in every community college in the South Carolina Technical College system. Will serve 21,000 new users per week. Rhode Island, $1.2 million grant, will serve an additional 7,000 users per week. Michigan, we awarded a $900,000 grant to Michigan State University to upgrade computer centers at public libraries, serve an additional 13,000 users per week across the state. Our third group of projects is sustainable broadband adoption. These focus on how we can spend a dollar to increase the adoption rate for broadband services. Last month, we issued a report analyzing data collected by our sister bureau, the Census Bureau, on the levels of broadband subscription across the country. We asked folks, why do they not use broadband? And the reasons they gave us were, one, they didn't need or understand the service, or two, they found it too expensive. So our sustainable broadband adoption projects have therefore focused on addressing the reasons people have given for not subscribing. So, for example, just this week, we awarded $18 million to the Cleveland-based organization One Community for a largely Ohio project that will reach over 330,000 people with an awareness campaign. It will train 33,000 people in both urban and rural areas and provide households with discounted computers. For all these adoption projects, our key focus is on the ability of the grantee to measure the level of subscribership in the target communities, both before the program and at various times throughout the program. We want to make sure that the dollars are well spent, and it is imperative that we be able to measure the program impact to determine which of these approaches to increasing adoption actually work. Our last category, broadband mapping. By the end of this week, we will have awarded 54 out of a possible 56 grants to states and territories, totaling approximately $100 million. They will use these funds to collect and verify broadband subscription and infrastructure data, and we're expecting the first data by the end of the month. This will be used to create the national broadband map, and assuming the carriers follow through on their promises to supply the data, we hope to use it in our review of the second round applications for infrastructure projects. Very quickly, I'll just talk about round two. Earlier this week, we announced an extension of our March 15th deadline for all infrastructure projects to March the 26th. Our deadline for public computer center and sustainable adoption projects remains March the 15th. In round two, we will continue our focus on funding comprehensive community infrastructure projects, and Administrator Adelstein at the RUS will be focusing on rural last mile projects. I tell you that I am confident that we will continue to meet the challenges we face between now and the statutory deadline of September 30th, and I expect that by the end of this year, as the Recovery Act requires, our program will have benefited every state to the extent practicable. So thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I really look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Strickland. Mr. Adelstein.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Stearns, and members of the committee, it's great to have the opportunity to testify. It's great to be back. I certainly appreciate the leadership of this committee in promoting rural broadband deployment and deployment across the country. This committee has been really on top of bringing this back to the national agenda where it belongs. As Congressman Markey indicated, it was left behind for too long, and I appreciate your resources and leadership. On behalf of our Secretary Vilsack, and our Undersecretary, Dallas Tonsager, I just want to express the high priority that the USDA places on getting this job done and getting it done right. Broadband is one of the central pillars of the Secretary's view as supporting the future of rural America. And it's a special honor to appear with my friend and partner in this, Larry Strickling, who's such an outstanding leader. We work hand in glove on every aspect of this and will continue to until we complete this effort. Today, I'm happy to announce that the USDA is awarding $254 million for 22 outstanding projects in 18 states. This brings our total to date of awards to over $895 million for 55 projects in 29 states and territories. These awards are going to bring broadband to hundreds of thousands of homes, businesses, and key community anchor institutions. Now, just in terms of this committee alone today, there have been previous awards made to members of this committee's districts, but today's announcement includes an $11.4 million loan grant combination in Congressman Hill's district that will serve 52,000 homes, 11,000 businesses, and 135 community facilities. Today's announcement also includes $8.3 million project in Congressman Upton's district that will provide fiber to over 1,400 homes. And it provides $2.3 million in Congressman Space's district that will deliver broadband to 11,000 homes that currently lack service. And I note this is our second award in your district. Also, we had the Consolidated Electric Cooperative get an award recently in Appalachian, Ohio, which would also be of interest to Congressman Markey, Chairman Markey, because it connects all of the substations of CEC's electric grid so that it can provide smart grid, a real model for the future of rural electric cooperatives. Now, in this first round, the number of applications, as you know, was higher than expected, and they underwent a very rigorous review process. We had to ensure that taxpayer funds were invested wisely. Applicants that didn't receive funding received a letter explaining why, and we've streamlined and refined the application process for the next round, which should speed the assessment process. Now, as you know, we've indicated that we announced our NOFA on January 15th. February 16th, we opened the window. We're giving applicants more time this round to apply and to be notified about what the rules are the second time around. And the original application deadline was March 15th. As Secretary Strickly noted, we've extended that. We went till March 29th in order to encourage applicants that were notified late in the process to reapply, and also to give everyone time to submit the best possible materials. We've also recently issued clarifications regarding the extension of service to Native American lands, which remains a very high priority for this administration because they're among the most underserved in the country. Now, in response to your feedback and issues raised by stakeholders, as you indicated, Mr. Chairman, we made major changes in our second NOFA. First, RUS and NTA published separate but very coordinated NOFAs, so applicants now can choose which program better suits their needs. Under NOFA 1, the only applicants eligible for 100% grants were those that were remote or 50 miles away from a city or town. All other applicants were limited to a grant of no more than 50% of the project costs. And as you noted, Mr. Chairman, in response to concerns raised by this committee, among others, and you, we eliminated the special funding category for remote projects. We heard you, and we responded. RUS now offers a 75-25 grant loan combination as a base instead of our 50-50 loan grant combination. So we split the difference between the 100% grant for remote areas and the 50% for non-remote areas. And to stretch our funds and our impact, we provided incentives for higher loan components and higher contributions of outside capital. Now we can increase that grant amount up to 100% for areas where it's needed most, the most rural areas, the areas that are hardest hit by the economic downturn. RUS will focus on last-mile projects that are really urgently needed in many rural communities. They connect directly to homes, businesses, and key community anchor institutions. NOFA 2 allows us to have more flexibility toward points for projects that target essential community facilities, promote rural economic development, and support persistent poverty counties or chronically underserved or unserved areas. And we're offering additional funding opportunities in the second NOFA. We're allowing satellite providers to compete for around $100 million to provide equipment and installation for rural premises that remain unserved after all other Recovery Act funds are obligated. And awardees of either NOFA can apply for technical assistance grants to develop a regional broadband plan or to provide broadband to rural libraries. We are on track to obligate the $2.5 billion in broadband budget authority provided to us by September 30th. With almost $900 million awarded to date by RUS, we've funded a wide range of technologies from wireless to wireline, and we funded a broad range of applicants from wireless broadband companies to cable companies to incumbent telcos. Our ability to offer these programs with these great economic opportunities for the future is really a result of your work and your support. It's an honor to work with you on behalf of the 50 million Americans in our rural communities, and I appreciate your continued oversight and how carefully you've overseen this program, and look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Edelstein. Mr. Strickland, we appreciate your sharing those thoughts with us this morning. I have a question for both of you. I think to the extent that you provide guidance to the applicants from round one who were not successful, it might improve the quality of the applications you get for round two, and those that were particularly close, that almost made the award in round one, should know that fact. So they're encouraged to apply again, and those might be some of the best applications you get. So Mr. Strickland, Mr. Edelstein, what are your plans to provide that kind of guidance?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And please turn your mic on.
Well, again, it's on, but I'm just not close enough to it. So in terms of round one feedback, first off, we did not use a point system to decide whether we would fund or not. We used it to screen applications, and then once projects went into due diligence, we worked with the applicant to see if the project met our goals. Did it deliver the benefits? Did it, was it sustainable? Did it have experience management? So about 400 applications went into due diligence. Fewer than 100 will be funded. But I would tell you that would be the group that you would call having been near the goal line. And through their discussions with us through the due diligence process, they have learned a tremendous amount about their applications, the strengths and weaknesses.
So you've already given them that kind of guidance just as a part of the round one process?
They will be well prepared to come back in round two, and we hope many of them do.
Okay, that's good. Mr. Edelstein?
Yeah, we sent out 1,000 letters by February 26 offering reasons, exact reasons why applications weren't funded. Now, we're still getting questions about that. We have a help desk that offers more detailed explanations to those who have questions, and we're striving to answer those calls as quickly as we can. We'll continue to be as responsive as we can. We're going to put up materials on the web, and we have, to explain some of the issues in the first round. We're really urging applicants to reapply in round two. We think it's crucial they come back to us. We addressed a lot of the major factors that were affecting applicants in round one, and round two is really a different ballgame. So we want them to focus on what's in the second NOFA and to get at it that way.
All right, thank you. I mean, if an applicant, Mr. Edelstein, that was not successful in round one has specific questions, do you have somebody they can interact with? Is there a process for doing that?
There is. We have our help desk, and we will answer calls, and we've gotten a lot of them about people trying to ask for an explanation as to what was in their letter, and we have provided that and explained that to them.
Okay.
And we plan to do more of that.
Thank you very much. Mr. Edelstein, you have a requirement for round two that in order to be eligible for assistance from RUS, the project must cost no more than $10,000 per home passed. And let me just express some real concern I have about that requirement. I represent, and I know that many other members do, districts that are mountainous, where communities are a long way from the nearest municipality, and they may be ringed by mountains, meaning that literally you have to cross mountains with infrastructure, and that necessarily elevates project costs. And these are some of the communities it really was the purpose of the stimulus legislation to serve. And I'm concerned they're going to be disqualified. Now, I know you have a waiver procedure that is attached to this $10,000 per home limitation. Tell me about how generous you intend to be with that waiver procedure. I'm looking for some reassurance that these very deserving communities that are just expensive to serve are not going to be disqualified.
We certainly understand your concern. The goal in the stimulus package is to stretch our tax dollars you've given us as far as possible. And we aim to strike a balance between expanding service and encouraging cost-effective investment. I understand that more remote areas are more expensive to serve, and that's why we do have the waivers that you indicated. Now, our waivers do allow for going above that amount if there are persistent poverty or chronically underserved areas, for regional development, which some members have talked about today, connecting rural libraries, tribal areas, community facilities. So we will be looking at particular issues like that.
All right, but you do intend to apply some waivers in those instances where the community, just by virtue of distance or terrain, can't meet that $10,000 standard.
We'll have to evaluate each waiver request as it comes in based on the criteria that we put in the NOFA.
Mr. Strickland, let me ask you this question. Did the non-discrimination and interconnection requirements that were a part of the NTIA set of standards discourage applicants from applying for benefits under your program?
There's little evidence of that in the sense that we received over 2,200 applications between our two programs in round one. We did hear from some of the larger carriers that not just those provisions, but I think the overall complexity of the program, the fact that this was open to such scrutiny may have discouraged some of them in round one. I don't remember hearing any carrier tell me it was solely because of the interconnection obligations that was a reason they didn't play. I've heard other reasons from other carriers. Some of them are reconsidering, I know, in round two. But I want to come back on this interconnection issue. The fact that we require interconnection in our projects, I think, is an important one to putting to rest this idea that we are overbuilding or building duplicative facilities. We are putting in these high-speed middle-mile facilities that will serve an entire region and a set of communities. And again, because they are open to everybody, every provider can interconnect with them and offer service. So if you're AT&T or a small incumbent telephone company, if you're the local cable company, perhaps you haven't been able to serve a large anchor institution in your community because the anchor institution didn't have the $30,000 you were going to charge to build the fiber out to the hospital.
Well, okay, Mr.
We will
Strickland,
pay for it, and then the incumbent can then use that.
I understand that completely. You're going to, I'm sure, get questions on that very subject from some of my colleagues momentarily.
Well,
my time has expired. We have a series of recorded votes pending on the House floor, 3 votes in all, and this will take about 45 minutes. So stay close. We're going to adjourn until those votes are concluded, and we will pick up momentarily.
even though they're reapplying for a second time, is it a level playing field?
Yeah, there's no preference for reapplications, but we certainly are encouraging applicants to do so. We have some great applications that for many reasons we weren't able to fund in the first round, and we aren't giving them preference, but they do have the advantage of having gone through it once and be able to refine their applications for the next round.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any further questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Christensen. The gentleman from Florida, Mr. Stearns, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I request unanimous consent to submit for the record a letter from the Department of Commerce Inspector General expressing concern that the NTIA does not have the staff or resources to meet the September 2010 statutory deadline for completion of the Broadband Technology Opportunity Program.
Without objection.
Okay. Secretary Strickling, did the stimulus bill provide you with enough time and resources to run the program right, and are you going to meet the statutory deadline?
I fully expect to meet the statutory deadline. We can meet it with the resources we have. I will say that it's typical for programs of this nature that administrative expenses be budgeted at 6% of the total project costs. We're doing it at the statutory mandated amount of 3%. So we could probably do it better if we had been given the 6%, but we will get it done with what we have.
So would I say that you disagree with the letter I put in the record?
Well, I think to be fair to the Inspector General, they raised it as a concern.
Yeah.
But we feel that we have answered that concern and are adequately staffed to do what we need to do.
Also, Mr. Chairman, I request unanimous consent to submit 2 letters into the record from the Phone and Cable Associations to the NTIA and RUS expressing concern that they are granting awards to projects that are deploying broadband where it is already available.
Without objection.
So again, Secretary Strickling and I guess Administrator Adelstein, these 2 letters point out a problem. Do you agree with these letters? And what do you plan to do to make sure you don't grant additional awards that simply build redundant facilities?
I most emphatically disagree with the letters. They are obviously quite self-serving, and they don't reflect what's actually happening on the ground. Congressman Stearns, you mentioned the North Georgia project in your opening remarks. I'd like, if I can, to take a minute and let's talk about the North Georgia project. Windstream claims that they have service available to 90% of the people who live in that area. Nonetheless, the governor of the state of Georgia rated this as his most important project to be funded because of the inadequate service that's being made available in that part of the state. The project was put together by 5 counties, each of which had their economic development agencies work with the anchor institutions and other people in the community to identify huge gaps in the adequacy of the service that Windstream is currently providing there. They took a survey of the area to determine that fewer than 40% of the people in the area actually subscribe to service, which again, if Windstream has it available to 90% and only 40% are taking it, that tells us there's a problem there. We had the specific example of the university in that particular region having sent us a note indicating that they had tried to get adequate service from the incumbent. They were told they would have to wait 18 months to get it, and when they did get it, it would cost 4 times as much as the same service would have cost in Atlanta. That area in North Georgia is a perfect example of an area that is not being adequately served by the existing provider. The people in those communities came together with a project to solve that because they suffer from a lack of economic growth. Companies have been fleeing that region because of a lack of adequate infrastructure. And our project, as recommended by the governor there as well as others, we think will be an important addition to the overall economy there and will lead to the growth of new jobs in an otherwise very depressed area. So I understand the concerns of a company like Windstream, but the fact of the matter is every indication we have in the record on that project is that they are not doing their job.
Yeah,
But more importantly, if I could just finish, Congressman,
I can't have you take all my time.
Infrastructure is built.
Yeah, I know. You know how it is. I can't give you. Windstream says it's 58%. You say it's 40. I don't know. Did you investigate independently, or is this just your?
That information, the 58%, was not provided to us in
Okay.
the challenge process.
Okay. Mr. Adelstein, why don't you answer the question I also asked you?
Yes, we have a major emphasis in our first and second no fund going to areas that are unserved. For example, we give 10 points for the proportion of residents in unserved areas. We target rural areas. Distance from non-rural areas is still a factor. We are very carefully evaluating every complaint that comes in that we're going to an area where there is service. We independently evaluate that and ensure that that's not the case. In the case of one of the concerns that was raised, I mean, 4,600 square miles, almost all of it, no broadband service. So I would take issue with the letter.
Okay. My last question, Secretary Strickling, in your February 24th remarks before the Media Institute, you acknowledged that the country's statutorily set policy was to leave the Internet unfettered, these are your words, unfettered by federal or state regulation, end quote. You said that policy was once appropriate, but now it should be changed. If the policy was set by statute, doesn't that mean it's a providence of Congress, not regulators like yourself, to decide whether it needs to be changed?
I did not say it was set by statute.
Well, you said unfettered by federal and state. You said that the policy was once appropriate but should now be changed.
I think I raised the question as to whether it should be changed, and I pointed out in those remarks.
Okay, well, let's just take your words today. Do you think it should be changed?
I think there is a role for government to play to preserve trust on the Internet.
Do you think administrators should make that change, or Congress?
I think it's the type of intervention or facilitation I talked about in my remarks, which was to serve as a convener and a facilitator.
No, just yes or no.
Parties does not require any intervention from Congress.
So you can make this decision yourself, and Congress, it's not the province of Congress to do it. So you feel you have the right to make these changes yourself?
To bring parties together to sit down and talk about copyright piracy, to try to come up with what might be a legislative proposal to Congress, yes, sir, I think I can do that without asking permission from Congress.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stearns. The gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Terry, is recognized.
Thank you,
for 5
Mr.
minutes.
Chairman. And to quote my good friend John Dingell, I have utmost respect and appreciation for you, but. So let's go into that. Mr. Adelstein, I was a little disappointed that you decided to associate yourself with Mr. Markey's remarks. I'm getting a little frustrated that somehow any problem is associated with the terrible 8 Bush years, and I think you belittle yourself when you engage in that. So I'm disappointed in that. Other than that, I like you, and I think you and I share the same dedication to getting broadband rolled out throughout America. In the debate we had on the stimulus in here, I would say out of the entire package that we had before us, we probably spent a third of our time debating the nebulous terms on the broadband rollout of underserved and unserved. What does that mean? It becomes carte blanche to just put it anywhere and it's going to meet the definitions. The retort was this money needs to get out. It isn't really about a comprehensive broadband policy. It was just about getting the money out the door as quickly as possible, which then we came back and said, well, then you're going to have redundant systems and wasted money. And maybe there's evidence of that actually occurring, and I want to walk through with you, particularly on the Maine situation. Have I gotten permission to put the Maine up? This was provided to us by one of the telecom associations. So I may have only gotten one side here, Mr. Adelstein. This is a NTIA project, so you get the question. But it appears from the map, and it is a little hard to see on the screen, but the red on there is the existing broadband infrastructure. A blue dotted line, which is right next to the main loop, is the grant applicant that is receiving, I think, $17 million. The grant applicant is Bidford Internet Corp., now calling themselves Fiber Maine, that is ostensibly associated with the University of Maine. So it looks here that all we're doing is putting in a redundant line as opposed to providing unserved areas. So first question is, what is the policy with the NTIA in regard to unserved versus underserved? Follow-up question for your answer there is this underserved? Is Maine underserved?
Sir, this is
No, I'm asking Mr.
my
Adelson.
project.
I was told this is NTIA.
I'm NTIA.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're RUS now. I wanted to talk to you. Sorry, Mr. Strickland. Well, you've been pretty combative and argumentative, so let's keep going with that.
Very good. I'd love to. Maine is definitely underserved, and that map, I think, is not an accurate reflection of actual broadband serving in terms of customer serving facilities. I think what you have there is a map of interoffice fiber to allow the incumbent carrier to move their own traffic on their own network, but it's not really being used to provide adequate broadband service to homes and businesses in that community. What our network will do when it's put in will be open to any provider, unlike the incumbent's network where nobody else can use it, who will then be able to tap into that network and serve homes and businesses that we're not serving directly in our funding, but it now enables these homes and businesses throughout this area, most of which is underserved, if not unserved, and are not receiving consumer services from the incumbent of the sort that will now be made available with this.
Well, my 37 seconds left, and good job being combative again.
No, sir, I'm giving you the
You are. So hold on. Will you give me NTIA's definition of underserved?
Happy to. It's been established from the NOFA last July. There are three parts to our definition. Number one is the area have less than, do the people in the area less than 50% have access to broadband? That's one prong of the
Okay, access.
Second prong is do fewer than 40% actually subscribe? And the third prong, any one of the three which is required to be met, is does the incumbent offer service of 3 megabits per second or greater?
Okay.
In the case of Maine, along that fiber that is being built in this project, there are many, many communities that satisfy the underserved test. I don't have a clear recollection of the unserved. I'm sure there are some unserved.
Would you,
thank you, Mr.
where do
Terry.
we get the information about which
Mr.
communities
Terry,
are
your time has
underserved?
expired. The gentleman from...
Will we get a second round?
I don't think we're going to have time for that today, Mr. Terry.
Can we have another hearing with
Well, we will be able to submit questions in writing to the witnesses. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Dingle, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I thank you for your courtesy. I'd like to welcome our panel. First question to Secretary Strickling. I hope you can give me a yes or no answer to this, Mr. Secretary. I notice in the second notice of funds availability that NTIA has removed the requirement that infrastructure projects connecting community anchor institutions, community colleges, and so forth must be located in unserved or underserved areas. This appears to me to be contradictory of the intent of Congress that stimulus funds would be used to bring broadband directly to unserved and underserved communities and households. Am I correct in this, yes or no?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Now, Mr. Secretary...
At least you're correct in terms of whether we've removed it. I wouldn't necessarily agree with the rest of your comment.
Okay. Now, Mr. Secretary, what is the rationale then behind this shift? I find it very troubling because we have huge unserved areas and we have a real serious problem in the fact that funding for the kind of changes to bring them service is desperately needed, but we're not giving it to them. Now, how does this relate to your policy now?
We're still quite consistent with that concern, Congressman. Number one, the statute had 5 purposes. As in round one, you are correct that we did require anchor institutions to be in unserved or underserved areas to qualify for funding. It was pointed out to us by many people, including many people in the subcommittee, that the statute did not require that. The statute allowed and suggested that we should support anchor institutions regardless where they're located. So in response to those criticisms, we removed it. But as we assess the benefits of the program, we will continue to evaluate the extent to which the applicant is serving unserved and underserved areas in order to demonstrate that the benefits of the project will be realized.
Mr. Secretary, and I hope you don't regard this as discourteous, but that you're telling me that you are not going to emphasize service to unserved and underserved areas.
Just the contrary. I just said we will. It's in our NOFA that you get priority for serving unserved and underserved areas.
I'm going to submit to you some questions in writing on this point, and I ask unanimous consent, Mr. Chairman, that I be permitted so to do. Now, Mr. Secretary, do you believe that this is, how do you intend to prevent overbuilding broadband infrastructure in areas of the country that are already served at the expense of the unserved areas?
We engage in a very detailed analysis as we assess the benefits of any given project. So on the question of what's already in an area, we have the submission of the applicant, we have the submission of the carriers in the area should they choose to provide that information. This spring, we hope to have information collected by the states pursuant to the broadband map.
Now, I beg your pardon for interrupting you, but we have limited time. What steps is NTI taking to ensure that these funds are not being used to fund projects that would lead to overbuilding in broadband in already served areas while the unserved areas continue to be inadequately or unserved?
Right. So we take all of that information I described and do an evaluation. Now, by its nature, a middle mile project connects back into the internet. So it will come into a served area almost certainly. But we look at the overall project and the overall benefits that the project brings to ensure that the amount of overbuild is minimal, and it's justified only when the facilities in the area are currently inadequate.
With apologies again, Mr. Secretary, how many complaints have you received from incumbent providers contesting middle mile projects to be funded under BTOP? And what has NTIA done about these complaints?
Well, we received information during round one. I wouldn't characterize them as complaints. They were information. If you're asking me how many complaints have we received for projects that have been funded, I'm aware that Windstream is upset about Georgia, and I understand Fairpoint in bankruptcy is concerned about the main project.
It would be fair to observe, though, that the information you have received has not been complimentary. Am I correct on that?
I think it's been very misguided and self-serving.
ARRA, again, Mr. Secretary, requires NTIA to make available not less than $250 million for programs to encourage sustainable adoption of broadband service. I note that in its second round of NOFA, NTIA pledges to award the minimum, i.e. $250 million, required under the statute for sustainable adoption projects. Given that a recent FCC report finds that only 4% of Americans do not have access to broadband, but 31% have access to it if they choose to, do you believe that the bare minimum required under the statute is sufficient to achieve ARRA's goal of sustainable broadband adoption? Can you answer that yes or no, Mr. Secretary, please?
I don't know. I know that if we get quality applications, we'll go above the $250 million.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Mr. Chairman, I thank you for your courtesy.
Thank you very much, Chairman Dingell. The gentleman from Vermont, Mr. Welsh, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the panel. We've been pretty frustrated in Vermont with a kind of hurry-up-and-wait situation. We had some of our folks submitting applications in round one, not getting much of an answer. We've been unsuccessful in getting any awards in round one. But I think the biggest frustration that our applicants have had is trying to figure out what the rules and regulations and the requirements are. And I know from my colleagues that they share an awful lot of that same frustration. So I have a couple of questions that I want to get to on that. But number one, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that only 15% of the amount promised for round one has been awarded. Is that right, Mr. Adelstein?
The amount is actually larger than that. We've done 895.
The percentage is what then?
Percentage, I'd say, by the time we complete this round, in the very near future, we'll have probably done 33%. 30%.
So, but it was by now it was supposed to have all been awarded, right?
Not by now. No, it has to be awarded by September 30th, 2010.
All right, and when folks in round one who applied were denied, did you provide applicants with information about what their technical problems were so that their proposals would be ready for round two? I mean, this is just a practical issue.
We did. We provided letters, over 1,000 letters to folks that had applied in the first round explaining why the application wasn't funded. In addition, we have a help desk set up that offers more detailed explanations, and we're striving to answer those calls as quickly as we can. We've got a lot of calls.
The dilemma, I don't want to be critical, but I do want to express the frustration that our folks in Vermont have had. They just don't get that sense that there's somebody on the other end of the line when they're making a call and they're not getting those practical answers. There may be somebody, quote, answering in an official way, but it's not as though there's some helpful information and knowledge to give them confidence that it's worth the time, effort, and expense to do a round two. So that's just for your consideration. Given the RUS focus on the last mile projects and NTIA's emphasis on middle mile projects, several Vermont companies or applicants have pointed out that they will be, from their perspective, unfairly disadvantaged by RUS preference for previous borrowers, as they have traditionally avoided borrowing from government. Vermont needs the investments from broadband investments, just like Mr. Terry's district does, to build these last mile facilities. So I'm just wondering, on a practical level, can you speak to that in a way that would be meaningful to our applicants in Vermont?
We really want to see those applicants. I mean, we are dead serious about having diversity. Congress did mandate a priority in the statute for existing borrowers, but we really are funding the strongest applications we get in. We are funding a diversity of technologies, a diversity of applicants, many of whom are not Title II borrowers already. We really want to see those applicants come back.
Let me ask you this, because you've got applications from all over. This creates there's, quote, available money. Some people call it free money, and they're going to be scrambling to apply and try to get it. What were the considerations that were the basis of you deciding to make awards in round one, and what were the obstacles or the deficiencies in applications that you found on a pattern in the rejected applications?
Well, we were looking for projects that served areas that didn't have adequate service today was the main feature, particularly rural areas. Looking at Vermont, it was very much like much of the country. The issues that we looked at primarily that caused applications to fall through were that a number of applicants that were supposed to be more than 50 miles away from a town or city, in fact, weren't, and therefore weren't eligible. We've eliminated that issue, so in the second round, people should be encouraged to apply on that. A number of applicants applied for more than a 50% grant amount, which was the maximum in the first round. Again, we've gone up to 75, and we've provided flexibility. And again, that should encourage applicants to reapply. Finally, we had issues with financial feasibility, which hopefully they can address.
Well, and there's a process by which incumbents can challenge the qualifications of an applicant's service area. So it torpedoes an application. How are you going to handle that? I mean, how can, on a practical level, we handle that?
We don't take the word of the incumbent or the word of the applicant. We actually will go into the field and determine whether there is service there. We have a field operation in virtually every state in the country, and we will go out and look at applicants' word versus the incumbent and make our own determination. Now, applicants will say their areas are underserved. The incumbent will say it's served. We can't just take either one or the other as a priority. What they're saying, we have to do our own analysis, and we do. So people, just because they're getting those assertions, they should really know who's in their area. If you're applying for funding, our competitive analysis requires them to say who else is in the district that they're trying to serve, the service area, and let us know and then we will evaluate that in terms of whether the project is actually feasible.
Okay, thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Welsh. I want to say thank you on behalf of the subcommittee to Mr. Strickland and Mr. Adelstein for your time here this morning. You have been very forthright in your answers. We're informed by them. We thank you for that. I want to congratulate you again on the good job you've done. I think given the time frames under which you've had to operate, your performance has absolutely been remarkable, and you have this subcommittee's thanks for that. Other members will be submitting to you written questions. Chairman Dingell has indicated his intention to do so. I think Mr. Terry may well have some additional questions, and other members. When those are received, please try to answer them promptly, and the record of this hearing shall remain open in order to receive them. So with the subcommittee's thanks to both of you, this hearing stands adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.